Hello and welcome to today's video. In this video we're going to be learning how to create this rain effect. It's pretty simple, pretty easy, but before we get into it, I'm going to explain some things first. One, this is going to be split up into chapters so you can easily find which bit you need to know. Two, the pretty version of this is pretty limited in that it only really works with static animation. Like not barely any movement, because when you move it, the texture still moves as if it's in like 3D space because it uses the object coordinates. But if you want to use the generated coordinates, that unfortunately means the rain drizzle does defy gravity. If you have a solution for this, please let me know. So the first thing we're gonna do is just get our base rain in. We can get started with that by modeling what we need for the rain. So let's add a rain collection. We'll put a new one called rain geometry. I think that's spelled right. And we also need some scale reference. So we're going to add in our object and you do that. We're just going to append that. There we go. We don't really need to see anything other than the object for now. And on the object, you might want to disable the armature just for now. Okay, back to the rain. Let's make the geometry to scale. So first thing we'll add is just the water droplets, which are just icospheres. And then you select this thing down here. You can turn the subdivisions down. And then we'll just tab into edit mode with vertices selected, scale it 0.1, and then we'll scale it 0.1 again. And we'll just leave it at that for now. We'll call this rain drop, and we can change its name in the mesh as well, like that. Now, let's add in the streaks. So add a plane, scale this down to 0.1, then scale that to 0.1. Going to rotate it on the 90 degrees this way, move it 0.2 meters that way. We'll hide the guy for now, and then we'll extrude it 0.4 this way on the x-axis. Then Control R to add a loop cut in the middle, right click to make sure it's in the middle. We can move this to point. We'll put it 3 points from here. You don't have to be exact on this. Then we can merge this center and merge this end at the center as well. You might be able to see where we're going with this. And there's our streak. We'll shade both these smooth because there's no reason not to. Now let's add in our plane of effect. Actually, we'll name this rain smear. That'll do. Put that in here. And then this is our rain area. Drag that there as well. Okay, so we don't need to scale this in edit mode, so we'll just scale it 5 there. Move it up. Yeah, 5. Okay, we use a particle system to do the rain, so it's super easy to do. New particle system. Set the number to 25,000. The start time, -10. It doesn't really matter that much. We'll set our max frames to 500. There we go. You can see our particles. But the way I like to have it is they just basically extrude from the plane, so gravity doesn't affect it or anything like that. They just come shooting out of the plane, which we can do pretty easily. We'll up their velocity first though. There we go. Tab into edit mode, Shift N. Okay, that did nothing. Then Shift N and then select inside on this thing. And now they should shoot downwards. And we're also going to go into field weights and turn off gravity. So now we can just aim it and it'll shoot out that direction, which is pretty cool. Okay, now let's get our render working. Select render, change render as to collection. We'll use our rain geometry collection. It's already starting to rain. We have them to scale, so we can set them to 1. And the rotation is off, so we'll turn on rotation, have it align with normal. And there we go. You have your rain. That's basic stuff done. You can customize it however you want it to look. But these are personally the settings I use. Actually, did forget to mention, I do like to add a little bit rotation, but not too much. Because if you do too much, it doesn't look great. But if you just add a little, I find it looks a little bit better. By the way, if you want to move in smaller increments, but still have them locking onto stuff when you hold control, just hold Shift and Control at the same time, and you can control it like that, which is pretty cool. Okay, now that we've got this plane done, we can viewport, we can turn off show emitter, and then in the render we can turn off show emitter. As you can see, you can't see it, it's just good. All right, now those smears look a bit too thick, so let's move it 0.2 this way and whoops, 0.2 this way as well, and then scale these down 0.5. No, I think I made it too long. Move these 0.1 and move this 0.1. There we go. I think that's pretty good. All right, customize that to your heart's content. Now we're going to move on to the geometry node stuff. Don't worry, not too complex. It's reasonably simple and we should get through it pretty quickly. Let's go to our object and let's add geometry nodes. Okay, new geometry nodes. Oh, not the shade editor, geometry node editor. There we go. Now that we've got this here, let's move it after the armature, but before the subdivision, because when you try and use subdivided geometry, for some reason it lags out really badly. First thing we're gonna do is add some dropping, like we want these to drop and fall off our character. We do that with some simulation stuff. But this is probably the least necessary part of all of this. So the first thing we're going to do, going to capture attribute. We don't need this right now, but we'll just put it in here anyway. Change this to vector, add a normal node and plug that into the value. Okay, now let's add a distribute points on faces. Use this as our geometry. Control Shift left click if you have the Node Wrangler add-on enabled. Set our density to 1 for now. Then let's add a simulation zone. There we go. Move this over and add a join geometry. Plug that in between these two and put the faces there. So this next bit is entirely based on this tutorial. I highly recommend checking it out. He will explain it in much deeper detail, so we're just going to speed through this bit pretty quickly. Let's go to frame 1 just to make sure this all works properly. Going to add a store named attribute right here. Going to Shift E, add another one. Then we're going to add a set position node right there and a delete geometry node right there. We're going to instance on points, and our instance are going to be the raindrops right there. Control Shift left click, so when we get this all set up we'll be able to see what we're doing. Going to name this age. It's going to store the integer value. We're going to add a named attribute. Shift D, add another one over there for later. Going to plug this into a math node. Set the value to 1. We're going to change this one's name to age as well and plug this into the value. We're going to duplicate these two, change it to greater than, and plug it into the delete geometry selection. So this is going to control the lifetime of our points. Let's add the gravity. New name there, copy, paste it in there. Okay, we want to change this to a vector. Add in a vector math subtract. There we go. And we're going to drag it out from here. Random value. There we go. So this is going to be the strength of the gravity basically. I'm going to set these to 0. So to do this, by the way, just drag down. Going to set this Control Shift to fine 0.1 and 0.2. So this is the Z here, Z on these two, and the speed at which these fall is a random value between these two numbers. So it isn't much, but that little randomness can really help spice it up. And then you can also control the direction it goes by controlling these two. Then we'll plug this into the value. There we go. Let's also scale instance. There we go. Scale these instances with another random value, but first we'll get a math node, set it to multiply. By the way, any letters that have that little mark underneath them, that's the shortcut for them basically. So instead of selecting selecting multiply, you can just press M on your keyboard, changes it to multiply. I'm going to get another math node and set it to divide. Plug that into the top value. Going to divide it by 2 and then add a random value right there. Plug this into the bottom. So our maximum is half of our minimum, which we do with this thing here. Set this to 1. Plug it into the scale. That's all there is to that. We'll hide the rain area. Okay, that's interesting. Oh, I forgot to do something stupid. Don't forget to plug in a scene time, but you can do whichever one you want. I prefer frame to there. So there we go. We can see him spawning in. We just need to plug this into the offset of the set position, and there we go. They're moving now. They seem to be going quite fast, so I'm just going to scale these up just so I can see them a little better. Oh my goodness. I forgot to make this, instead of float, turn it to vector. There we go. That's what we're looking for. Alright, let's scale this back down to 1. Okay, so they're subtle, but they are there. And to change the speed, quickly run through what these do. This is how long they last. So they'll last 50, whatever that value really is. This will control the direction they flow down. So I think it's ZYX or XYZ for both of these, minimum and maximum. This will control the size, and the second point will be half of that. So if you set this to 1, the maximum will be 0.5. You don't really need to worry about rotation because they're just the icospheres. Density, if you want more, you can have more. Don't really need more than 1 though, I don't think. Now let's add it to our actual mesh with just a join geometry node right here, and plug the instances into there. And now you can see, I think they're falling a little too fast, so we can add a math node in between here, set it to multiply. I think they're moving just a little too fast. Let's put the gravity down just a little bit. There we go. I don't even know if that did anything. Doesn't matter. Looks fine now. Okay, and we've got that done. Pretty simple stuff. Let's add those cool splashes. This is, I think, my favorite part of this whole effect. But first, we're gonna actually model it. So, Shift A, Mesh, Circle, change it down from 32 verts to 8 verts, because we don't want it to be too dense. It's Edit mode, move it up 1 meter, extrude it down 2 meters, and then merge these at the center. Actually, we'll shade smooth this. A to select all, and then we're going to move it up 0.5, and we'll call this our rain splash. Just the name of the geometry as well. And then we can hide that and not render it because we don't want to render that. Back into geometry nodes. This one's a lot easier to do than the simulation stuff down here. We're going to add another distribute points on faces node here. Then we will instance the points again, instance on points. Our selection is going to be the rain splash right here, or our instances are going to be the rain splash rather. We're going to change their rotation. This is actually what we saved this attribute for before. We'll plug this into a align Euler to vector, and we'll plug it into the vector there. We plug the normal of the distribute points into that. There we go. So now if we set this to 0.5 and put it on the z-axis, they're going to follow along the normal, but they're only going to do that 50%. Otherwise they're going to be standing up straight, which just looks better in my opinion. Okay, let's randomize this scale a bit with, you guessed it, a random value node. We'll plug this into the scale. Don't want them to have no size, so we'll point it at that. And 0.02 for the maximum. And that's not too bad. Something you may notice is that they're not all on the top of the model or using the Z normal factor, which is actually found out pretty easy to do. All you need to do that is to grab this is what we grabbed an attribute for. Plug this into a equal compare node here. We plug this into the selection. We want to put 1 here. Change this to direction. Oops, direction. I'll just move all this stuff down just a little. Change the angle to 0 and turn this to 1. So now they should only be, oh, there we go. Let's turn this density up a bit. I'll do 200. There we go. Now we can see them. So now they're only on the Z values. which is pretty sweet. We'll organize this just a little. Plug this capture attribute one up there, and there we go. Now we have all three of them. If you want to animate it, add a math node, set it to multiply. On this bottom value here, we'll type in hashtag frame divided by 30. We're going to use that a lot, by the way. It makes a driver that gradually goes up. So my scenes are at 30 FPS, just so you know. So that's why it's set to 30. So if you have 24, maybe set it to 24. And we'll plug this into the seed. And so basically that'll control the frequency. Might want to turn this up to maybe a little faster than that. A little faster. We do also have a little animation we put on these. So you do want them to stay for a little bit. To pause. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 3 frames is good. I like 3 frames for each of these splashes. And there you go, you can see them moving. And you can see our drips. Let's actually have a look at how to make this splash, because right now when we look at it in rendered view, then just plain objects. Same with everything else actually. Let's add in our toolbox real quick. So this is where I like to put my cameras and my lights in. Shift A, add in a light, sun, change the rotation, there we go. And let's add 2 materials. Oh, actually, let's make our sun look a bit better, because that looks terrible right now. Set this to 15.1 bias, 9 distribution. Let's give our rain some materials. So new material, we'll call this, guess what, rain material. Change it to an emission by pressing E here. We'll put the same material on our smear effect. We'll quickly make this super easy to do. Shift A to add a RGB node. This is going to be the color of our rain for everything. So we're going to Control G to make it into a group. You can press N to pull up the side panel here and call it our rain color. Copy that, paste it into the label and paste it into the properties. There we go. We want our rain color to be this color right here. Now you could just leave it as a solid color, but I like a little transparency and a little bit of a gradient on it, which we can do. First we need to change shadow mode to none. I mean, you can have it cast shadows, but I personally don't see why you'd want to do that if you do cell shading style. Then change it to alpha blend. Well, that's it for the transparency. To add in the transparency, let's add a transparent node. Control Shift right click. You have to have the node wrangler add-on to use that, by the way, just to make sure everyone remembers. Then we're going to use a gradient to transition between these 2 values here. So we'll add a gradient node. Control T. Move this rain color out of the way for now. We can preview this node with Control Shift left click. That looks very not right. So we'll rotate it on the Z axis. Yep. And then add 1 onto the X value. So now you can see there's white here, black on this end. And then this will play the factor of these. We'll add a color ramp in between them. We do want some just transparency throughout the whole thing. So we'll change this black to 0.6. Yeah, as you can see, it gets more transparent at the end there. Okay, very cool. Now we're going to add in a hue saturation value node, plug our rain color into it. Then we'll Shift D and this one again, plug this color into it. Going to Shift D again, this is just temporary. Control Shift right click to mix these 2. Delete that value right there. Our gradient once again is going to play the factor between the colors. So I'll plug that in. Backspace this color ramp to set it to its default values, and the rain is going to be in our A slot, and this hue saturation is going to be in the A slot. This hue saturation is going to be in the B slot. So this is so we can easily change the color of our rain for each object, because some objects it might look a little different. The hue might be a little off, the brightness might be a little off. You just plug this into the emission color, have it so the more transparent it is, it's about half the darkness as well. Let's change so it's just a bit more transparent. 0.7 on this color ramp here. There we go. Got our colored rain, and even the little spheres have that little nice gradient on them as well. Looks like it's rotated on the wrong axis for the geometry nodes one. So that's a super easy fix. Just rotate them -90 on the x-axis. And there you go. Now the gradient's working on our geometry nodes thing as well. These splashes are still looking pretty terrible, so let's fix that right now. Add a new material. We're going to go back to our rain objects. Yeah, we're going to copy all of this. Copy, paste that in, and blend mode to alpha blend, and shadow mode to none. Now, we're also going to add a noise texture. So, noise texture, Control T, like so. We want to stretch this on the Z axis, so we'll scale this halfway. We're going to, just so we have random noise for each of those objects, we're going to add an object info node. Plug this into a combine XYZ. We're going to plug it into the X and the Y values. So the position is randomized for each object. We're going to frame divided by, let's do 50. So now we can see, oh, it's moving the wrong way. We want it to splash upwards. So we'll just put a negative in front of that. And there you go. You can see him splashing upwards now. Very nice. Let's mix in our gradient texture. Control Shift D to duplicate with the connections still. And we're going to Control D, give our noise a color ramp as well. And we're going to mix these two color ramps together, like so. Flip the colors around with this little drop down menu here for our noise color ramp. We'll bring in the black a little bit, 0.8, and then we'll bring in the white, 0.2, change this to 0.6. Then we're going to run this through a color ramp again, set it to constant. About 0.6. Oh, our gradient is facing the wrong way. 0.90. There we go. So you want to change this mapping node to be 90 degrees on the rotation and no movement or anything. There we go. Now we have our splash. We do want to move it up a little bit just so it reaches more of the top of our object that we've created. And that's pretty well done. We'll plug this into the factor right here, and we can change the black like we did for the other one to decrease the opacity. I personally prefer when you can't see the back layers, so all you need to do, turn on backface coloring. You can't see it when it's down, but I think that's fine. It just looks a bit nicer like that. And just hide this, and you can see our splashes are all animated on our character, and they're each unique, not the same noise texture. Okay, we'll rename this to our rain splash material. That's pretty well most of this tutorial. The rest is just to that shader thing. Once again, I'm going to warn you, this shader, you can either have it, unless you guys know something I don't, and I would love to know that, you can either have it look really nice with static stuff, so nothing that's moving. If you have it rigged and it moves around, it looks really bad. You can see the texture shifting. Or you can have them use the generated coordinates, which don't look as good and also defy gravity. So if you put the leg up, the drips will still drip down the leg like they do when they're straight down. So those are your two little warnings. If you can come up with a system that works better than this, please let me know. I would love to find out how to do that. This is a little bit daunting, I think, but it should be. I've simplified it a lot more from its original version, so it should work reasonably well. Select our object, go into shading. We can turn off all the UI stuff or overlays with that button there. Let's pin this so we don't lose our object. Okay, so this is our objects material. This uses our shading from this tutorial here, which you can check out if you're curious. I'm going to explain it as we go through how this works. We're going to use the Z normal as that fill splash zone area, which we can do by adding a geometry node and then plugging the normal into a mapping node right here. So this will let us control our rotation of our normal later. Then we plug this into a separate X, Y, and Z. And now you can see when we control shift left click to see, I'll keep clicking to get to Z. Now you can see our Z value. Now this is for later. We'll control shift D and then move it up. That will save that value for later. We can plug this into a math node set to multiply. Math multiply. This is so we can control its strength. 1.5 should be the value we need, but you never know. This is so we can clamp it a little bit. We'll add a color ramp. Pull this black in to 2.5. Yeah, preview that versus that. Clamps it a little bit. Now we're going to add in the noise. So we'll move that up. Okay. Noise texture. You can do this with a Voronoi texture. All you need to do is invert it before you plug it in anywhere. We're going to use the object coordinates. So if you want to use, we'll set the scale up to 75. If you want to use the generated coordinates, just set the Y scale to whatever makes it look, instead of it all being stretched out like that, you want it stretched like, not stretched at all, really. Okay, but we're going to use the object coordinates because they look nicer and they just fit around our object better. Now we're going to scale the z-axis to 0.075. So now you can see it's stretched on the z-axis. This is what will give us our drizzle effect. We'll turn the detail up to 10, the roughness to 0.1, like so, and the distortion to 0.5. I find these are the best settings for noise, but you can just add, if you want to use the Voronoi texture, just plug the mapping into here. Set the same scale up, 75, and then make sure to invert it. Invert the color because it looks much better like that. I personally prefer it over the noise, but I think the noise or more people use that, so we'll stick with that for now. Before we mix this in with our Z and normal, we're going to create a mask. This is a technique I learned pretty recently and I'm super stoked about it. I think it's super cool. We're going to add an attribute node and we're going to use, now you could use a texture instead, as long as you painted it with like gradients instead of hard sharp colors. But we're going to use instead the color attributes because they are awesome. We're going to call it our noise rain mask and we're going to copy that for later. Press OK. We want to spectate that and we're going to control shift right click, have this be our factor, and we're going to add white. So just so you can see it, this attribute's color is going to play the factor between our noise and a white color. And we're going to paste the name into here as well. So on spots like here, our masking that we're going to do with a gradient texture later isn't going to cover this sort of area very well. So we can do that with a vector paint mode. So we'll paint all this area white. Just this whole area white. There you go. Oh, I didn't have mirror on, so we'll undo that. Turn on our mirror, try that again. So this will be like when we get up to the effect, you can choose more precisely where you want it to be, but this is a pretty safe spot that you probably don't want it to pull up here in that armpit. You can see our mask covers up that noise areas pretty nicely. Now let's mix these color ramp with our noise texture. Control shift right click, mix these two. We actually want the normal value to play the factor, the noise to plug into A, and the B to be black. Then we're going to use our, actually, you can add another one of these and invert it so that it acts as another mask from the other direction, but I don't think we're going to worry about that, so we'll delete this one here. We'll instead add a gradient texture. We'll Control Shift right click and then backspace to reset it all, and plug that into our gradient. Plug our gradient into a map range node. Map range, oh, I can just change it to float, there we go. Plug the color into the value. We want to switch these, invert it at the moment, so we'll just put a 1 here, and then a -0.2 works for my object. We can preview that. Oh, it's rotated on the wrong axis. There we go, rotate on 90 degrees on the y-axis. And about here is where I want this rain to stop working, and you can control its strength, position, all that sort of stuff with these values here. Just yeah, just fiddle with it till it feels right with your object, but you don't want a harsh edge, otherwise it just looks like the rain splashes will just disappear instead of gradually fading away. We might actually even move this up a little bit. Yeah, we'll move that there. Now go back to your previous values, and then you can just rotate it on the y-axis. You can just move the set X value. So we'll put it here. Yeah, there you go. Okay, I don't like it going past this spot. We're also going to use the generated coordinates instead of object coordinates. Oh, change that to, okay. There we go. Yeah, we're going to use the generated coordinates, so if you do move this around, it's the master skill going to apply the same way. If you have an A posing character, it might take off some of the hand as well, just so you know. So be careful with it. Now that we've got that sorted, let's mix these two together. This is going to play the factor again, except it's going to be white in the bottom value this time. And now let's run this through a color ramp. Set it to constant with O, and we'll drag that to about I think 0.4. Yeah, there we go. So you can kind of see it already. We might actually want to flip these colors around. We're going to use this as a mask, basically. 0.4. Let's animate this noise texture really quick, which we can do super easily. It's the exact same way we animated the splash noise. Plug it into a combine. Plug this into a math node so we can have more control over it. Math multiply. Set the second value to frame divided by, let's see, 1,000. So and control the speed of it with the top value right here. Don't want it to be too high, don't want it to be too low. If you want to control the streakiness a bit more, all you need to do for that is add in, I guess you could use a color map range node, but I find just color ramps are easier to see. Color ramp. Oh, I forgot. It's not how they spell it. Okay, plug in a color ramp here, and then we can just bring up the black, bring out the white, and so they're a little more streaky. Yeah, you see that? But it also means that the it doesn't mix as much as you may want it to with the base value. So we'll just bring it up 0.1 and then bring this down 0.8. There we go. So now it's just a little more streaky. Let's bring up our gradient texture a bit because I'm not a big fan of where it is. There we go. Put it there. So now it just stops at this part of his body. Okay, now that we've got that sorted, let's finally use this as a mask. So we're going to want to add our rain color back into this scene. Going to want to plug this into a hue saturation, and we're going to want to plug this into a hue saturation value. Going to duplicate this again, mix them, and plug in the first hue saturation into A, the second hue saturation into B. And we're just gonna change the hue 0.4, which we can see by previewing. This is going to plug into the color. There we go. So this will be our secondary color, and this is our main color. So the mix between these is actually going to be this value right here. So we'll plug this in like that. There we go. Let's see, we might want to make it a little more subtle. So maybe 75. Yeah. Well, that's nice. Now we can mix this with our base shader, Control Shift right click, and use this clamped color ramp as the factor between them. And there we go. You can see our rain texture on it. You might want the opacity to go down a bit. Same thing, change the black up to a, nope, other way, change the white to a darker color, and now it's slightly more transparent. You can fiddle with the colors a bit more to get them how you like. I'll just leave it at instead of, so we can control it with another node, add a math node and then set it to multiply, and then we can set how strong we want it to be overlaid onto it. Then what you're going to want to do, grab these, push them over here, going to select all these, and then Control G to put them into a group, and we'll name this Rain Drizzle. Paste that into all the things. We can swap these two colors around so it looks a little neater, like that. There we go. So now you can control stuff with this rain drizzle node just by plugging it into the input here, like you do with geometry nodes. So some values you may want are the scale of the noise, the speed of the animation, the strength of the base, like the strength of the base thickness, the hue of the of our secondary color. And then we're going to add a combine XYZ, plug this into our rotation here, and then we can control the rotation with these X and Y values here. So there you go. I believe that's it. You may actually want to take this out. So we'll just Control C, delete that, paste it in here, and add a input. It'll be this here, and plug the socket into this value here. So then you can still use this group for other objects. Just each object has their own rain texture noise thing. Mask thing. And there you go. There you have it. That's how you make the rain. If you're curious on how to do the one that follows the rig a bit better, just change it from object to generated for the noise texture. Scale this down to 0.2, was it? We might want to scale it up a bit more. Maybe 125. There we go. So now this will follow the object. I can show you with the rig right now. So see how the noise texture isn't moving, but if we used the object right there, you'll be able to see that it slides around, which it doesn't look good. We'll stick with the object for now. You might want to change the gradient position maybe. Oh yeah, that's another value you want. Plug that into a combine XYZ. So plug this value in here so we can control the gradients position like such. And there you go. You'll just have to fiddle with it for each position that you want. I think this is pretty cool. I hope you like it. Apologies that it's not perfect and that it can't be used as dynamically as I wanted it to be. But if you look at comics, I've only really seen this kind of effect on static stuff, not really movement stuff. Let's actually change the color of the splashes to match with our thing here. This is why we added this other hue saturation node, just so we can get it on the splashes. Splash, unpin, there we go. So we want the saturation to go down a little bit, brightness up, yeah, there we go. So now that matches a little bit better. And we can do the same for the rain by adding a little less saturation and a little brighter. There you have it. There's our rain texture that you can set to whatever color you want. You can have red rain, you can have green rain, you can have blue rain. I'm not gonna do any other colors because some people are weird, I found out. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope this helped. I hope you like this one. Thank you for all the support on TikTok and Reddit. That was insane. I hope this helped you, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day / night.